Hello everyone, welcome to episode 3 of Veteran's Voice. Thanks for joining us, and today we've got a special guest, Jenna. Jenna, thanks very much for joining us today. We appreciate you giving up your time to speak to us and telling us your story. So for the people watching, can you tell us who you are and who did you serve with?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for coming down and having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. So I'm Jenna. I spent 13 years in the Royal Air Force. I was a medic and then later qualified as a paramedic. I did tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, and I also was part of Ep.3, which was during the Libya troubles that they had.
So from the beginning, what made you want to join up in the military?
Who knows? Who knows? I don't know. It was something that I always wanted to do, but I couldn't tell you when that came about. So I'd say from 10 or 11, I used to say that I was going to go into the military, and I always used to tell people that I was going to be a fighter pilot. I think I might have watched a bit too much Independence Day with Will Smith and that sort of thing. And then sort of over time, when I realised that I wasn't academically blessed and wasn't very good at maths and angles and stuff like that, the fighter pilot dream sort of got pushed to one side, and I decided that I wanted to be a medic. I really liked aircraft. And then at about 13, I joined the Air Cadets and did that till it wasn't cool to be in the Air Cadets anymore, which was probably about 16. And then joined up at 17. So I could never pinpoint what it was that made me want to do it. I just had this drive to join the military, and I wanted to do a job that allowed me to go as far forward as a female could at that time, and that tended to put you into the space of probably something like a medic, which is what I went and did.
So what was the process in order for you to become qualified?
So obviously went to the careers office because this is like 20 years ago now, so nothing was online or anything like that. So it was old fashioned. Went to the careers office, did the interviews, did the exams. Didn't really qualify for anything other than the thick trades, if I'm honest. So that's a sort of fairly low level. So it was so luckily I was able to join up as a medic, did the medical and the interviews and all the rest of it. Went to RAF Holton, which I think was 7 weeks at the time. I can't remember now. And then after I'd come out of Holton, then went to Keogh Barracks, which was a tri-service medic training. So you trained alongside the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. And you also had soldiers that were coming to be add-on sort of like medics, so that like a Royal Marine who was going to be, they were already a qualified Royal Marine phase 3 people that would come and do the medics course as well. And I think that was about 10 months of trade training, and then posted out to my first unit, which was RAF Odium.
And how long were you with your first unit?
I think I was at RAF Odium for about 3.5 years.
And where did you go from there?
From there, I then went to work with Tactical Medical Wing because I really enjoyed that, the greener side of the Air Force. So went to work with Tactical Medical Wing, which was based at RAF Lynham, and I was part of a squadron called the Deployable Aeromed Response Team. So that was a group of, so there's doctors, nurses, medics, paramedics, and our job was that if anything ever kicked off, we would be able to take our squadron and have an aeromed facility straight away. So that would be like a tented facility that you could just up and leave. So we were on like a short notice of readiness. Most of the time, that job was doing stuff like covering exercises. We used to cover CCAST, which is the critical care aeromed support. So we used to do the strategic moves. So that would be out of theatre. So we would have a rota where you would fly from the UK to Afghanistan and bring the patients back that were critically injured. So you're talking about people that are ventilated and really unwell. So we kind of filled in for lots of different things on that sort of squadron, which was really good. I enjoyed that a lot.
What was your initial reaction when you told you were being deployed on Ep.3?
So my first deployment was Telic in 2007, which was a while ago. And I volunteered for it. So I was based at Odium. And I volunteered to go away because that's what I joined up for. And Herrick and Telic were both going at the same time. But for me and for my job, Telic was kind of like the main runner at the time. and volunteered to go away and expected to do something like work in a med centre or something like that, which was what you did to cut your teeth on your first tour as a medic. And they just changed the rules, unbeknownst to me, that people that were going on the first tours that weren't corporals could go on the emergency response team, which was working on the back of the Merlin helicopters, picking the soldiers up from point of injury and bringing them back to Basra, to our hospital. So having thought that I was going to spend 4 months sat in a med centre kind of chilling out and maybe getting a suntan, I was a little bit surprised to find out that I was then going to be working on the back of a helicopter. And I was pretty nervous, and there was a few conversations of like, will she be all right to do it? Is she sort of, I was only 20, so is she kind of mature enough and whatnot? But they let me go, and I had a really good tour. I really enjoyed it.
Did you receive any different type of treatment with you being a woman?
Yes and no. I think this is like it's multi-layered sort of topic, really. When you're in the military, some people like having women in the military, some people don't like having women in the military. There's like lots of conversations about women going frontline and things like that. I never found that I couldn't necessarily do something that one of the guys might do, but I might have to work a lot harder to do it. So, for example, if I patrolled in Afghanistan, the exertion that would cause upon my body, I'm only 5'4", I weigh about 52 kilograms. So although the kit that I was carrying isn't ECM or anything, when you ratio kit, to your size, and walking those long distances was really difficult. And I always felt like I had to internally have a competition with myself, that I had to be as good as the average guy. Does that make sense? And some guys just didn't like having girls with them. It changed the dynamic of their group. Or say, for example, when we went on vehicle patrols or things like that, you would hook your Bergens, onto the outside of the vehicle, and I couldn't reach it, and my upper body strength meant that I couldn't necessarily lift the Bergen on, which some guys would be like, well, this is why we shouldn't have her, because she can't lift her kit onto the side of the vehicle. But there's also lots of things that I brought to the unit as a female that wasn't there as the guys. You've got that sort of softer side to you. They would come and talk about the problems or what was going on in the relationships. You don't have to do what everybody else can do all the time. You can bring something else that kind of fills a gap that's not there. Does that, yeah. So I think, but at the time, I definitely always felt like I had a point to prove, and I'm a feminine female, I can't kind of fit into the realms of the guys kind of mindset. And I think that anybody that's serving now should be unapologetically female if that's what they're doing, because you will bring something special to the unit that the guys won't, and you'll have that balance.
Any fond memories from your time? Any funny stories or anything like that? Or how about nicknames?
I've got like 1,000 funny stories. I could chat to you all day long. There's loads of stuff. I mean, I had a few nicknames. So my surname is Machin, and if you put an E on the end, is Machine. So I often got called Machine. They used to call me Feral because I was a bit of a wild child and I liked to drink at the time. And I went missing in Vegas for about 36 hours on one exercise. And then one of my other nicknames when I was in Afghan with one of the units was Femme Fresh, which was because when we were down at the FOBs, we used to get our post delivered like once a week. So it was a big deal. And we'd all kind of sit around the table and rip through your posts and stuff like that and be like, what have you got? What have you got? So this is about me and probably about 20, 25 lads ripping through all this post. And my mum would send out loads of stuff, and obviously it's pretty warm on a patrol. And I opened one parcel once, and my mum had just sent loads of tampons, sanitary packs, and loads of Femme Fresh, and I just ripped it open in front of all the lads, and I was trying to hide it all away, and they were like, hey, Jenna's got Femme Fresh. And then the next week they kind of come back, and you have your blood group in and stuff attached onto a little badge, on your thing. They'd gone and got one stitched up that said Femme Fresh and had a little Union Jack in the corner of it. So I proudly wore that for the whole time. So yeah, a few nicknames.
Going back to what you were saying about LA, Was it LA? Sorry.
Yeah, like Arizona and California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Earlier on, when we were introducing ourselves to each other, you were telling us a funny story about when you left something behind.
Oh yeah, there's many things that I left behind. I was definitely not the most exemplary airwoman that's ever sort of existed. But we went to, I used to do an exercise over in the States a couple of times a year, where I got attached to the parachute jump instructors whilst they did free fall training with soldiers. And part of that was that you had to have your trauma response kit with you. Most of it got shipped out on a Hercules aircraft or got pre-shipped out before you got there. But there was a really important piece of kit that I had to carry through customs and onto the aircraft myself, which was the analgesia, which included morphine. So that all has to be pre-signed off and put in a special container. So I'm like carrying this morphine all the way through, like through Heathrow and down to LAX airport and holding on to it and kind of thinking that I was pretty important, because I'm taking some hardcore drugs onto an aircraft. So I was like, this is pretty cool. Like, I don't even have to hide them up my bum. I'm just allowed to carry it. And then got to LA, and we were only there for one night. So if you've got one night in LA and you're in the military, what are you going to do? Like, you're just going to go and rip the town to pieces and have a great time and a great party, which we did. Got up in the morning, leaving the hotel. Everybody's got a fuzzy head. We've got loads of kit between us, and got in the car, got down to where we were going to do to the drop zone where we were going to do the skydiving. And I just suddenly thought, I feel like I haven't got everything. I was kind of thinking, like, what is it? What is it? So I had this massive realisation that I'd left the morphine in the hotel lobby. And had to sort of do a quick kind of risk assessment in my mind of, what do I do? So do I admit it and get in trouble? Do I ring up the hotel and try and locate the morphine, and then have to face the harsh reality that it could be on the streets of LA somewhere at this point, or do I just ignore it? But then I've got to go back home and tell them why I haven't got any morphine anymore. So I rang the hotel, and fortunately they'd put the bag into the baggage hold area. And I spoke to the MT driver that was there, who I'd quickly decided was a sound guy. And I just said, listen, if you drive back to LA, I'll give you $100 and go pick this morphine up for me. And just sort of looking at everyone kind of getting on the aircraft about to jump and thinking, I hope they don't need any pain relief.
Well, there's been a few stories similar to that I've heard. I think the recent one was a couple of guys had forgotten their SA-80s whilst out at Salisbury Plains, I think. So I can imagine there was a few bollockings for that. One guy that I know came home and he may have accidentally left a magazine in his pack. So he went through the whole phase thinking he said, oh shit, what am I meant to do here? Did I just stash it and forget about it, or did I go back and hand it in? Decided to be sensible and go back and hand it in and says to himself, right, I'm not going to say his name to save the embarrassment from him because I ken he'll kill me because he's very close with me. He decided to take it on the chin, just went back, and luckily enough he was just given a smack on the wrist, believe it or not, and he just got told, don't tell anybody. So there you go, mate, I've just told the whole world. From there, where else have you been deployed at?
So after Iraq in 2007, I did a tour in Afghan on Herrick as a patrol medic, and then later did a tour there on the medical emergency response team. And in between that, I worked on LMA, which is a lesser known kind of op, which was over Libya and supporting the aircraft. We actually got stationed out in Italy for 4 months for that. So I don't really class that as a proper op, if I'm completely honest, but there was a medal involved.
4-month holiday?
4-month holiday, yeah.
Oh, can't complain with that.
Yeah.
As long as the weather's nice.
It was all right. Apart from there was a massive hailstorm one day, and it was that bad that it like smashed up the entire MT fleet and put holes through all the windows. But yeah, that was pretty cushy. It was the first time I'd worked on a supporting fast jet operations as well, so it was quite different, from being like on the ground dealing with casualties to supporting fast jet units that are way miles and miles away, hours away from where the conflict is actually happening. You were completely detached from sort of the operation, the conflict in that kind of surrounding, which was a bit weird.
See how you were saying that you were on the patrols in Afghanistan. Did the attitude towards you continue when you were in Afghanistan?
So when I first went to Afghan as a patrol medic, I wasn't a paramedic at the time. I was the bog standard medic, and I was one of the first medics to get attached to the RAF regiment. So it was a new concept for them, and you did have to kind of cut your teeth within the squadron. We didn't at the time do operational training with them, so you hadn't got to know the guys before you went away. You just kind of turned up. You came as a sole entity as well and joined partway through their tour. And obviously, you're not one of them. You're not in the RAF regiment. You haven't done the same training as them. You're an add-on, and you're an add-on that's going to be out on patrol with them as well, which I think caused a certain amount of anxiety, with the guys. And you're also a female, so that's quite ostracizing. They're not used to that dynamic. So I definitely felt like I had to really prove a point, and it was difficult at times to just feel like you were part of the team, to be honest. And historically, the RAF regiment, it didn't take lots and lots of casualties. So I think at times they didn't always see the benefit of having a medic alongside them. And you were taking up the space of one of the guys who can carry the kit, or can operate the radio better, and those kind of things. So you did have to really prove your worth and work really hard to do that, and it was that was challenging, but I did get there, and I made really good friends, and I found my sort of space within the squadron of what I could support them with. When we were down at the FOBs, I actually used to do a lot of cooking for them as well, which is not super feminist of me, but do you know what? It meant that we had 10-man rat packs, and when I turned up down to the PB, the patrol base, the lads were just eating out of giant bean cans, that were meant to be for so that you could use a 10-man rat packs to make a big breakfast or something. And they were just drinking condensed milk, out the sort of thing. And I was like, shall we just have a proper dinner, lads? So I said, right, I'll cook. I'll start cooking one meal a day, because there's only 20, 30 of you, and we'll do morning patrol and evening patrol, and I'll cook one dinner a day, like a spag bol or something like that. And although, yes, you probably as a female, you probably shouldn't have to go to a unit and cook a spaghetti bolognese or sew someone's socks back together to be part of the team, but if that's what gets you where you need to be, and then people start talking to you and you start making those friendships and you're useful, then that can change everything.
I can imagine it would be a massive sort of boost in morale as well.
Yeah, and it just meant as well that we would sit down, and silly things like some of the guys would be in the towers, so you just you get the mess tins and just put the spag bol in there, take it up to the towers and say, here's your tea and whatnot, and people will be really grateful for that. So those small little things that help everybody out and just boost morale up, it will soon embed you within that team, and then they'll start to think, oh, we don't know what we did without her before she came here, and then someone will get unwell, whether that's unwell from some kinetic activity out on the ground, or you have to remember that whilst you're a medic and you're in Afghanistan, people still get ear infections, they still get the shits, and when they get the shits in Afghan, they will absolutely shit their body weight out of them, and they need you to help, so you will find your way with the team at some point.
Now, mind doing me a favour? Mind passing out what I've brought? Well, talking about Scran, I thought this would be a perfect moment to bring this out. I may have brought something to maybe see if it would bring back any memories. That's the one.
What is it? What menu is it?
There you go.
24-hour rations, bacon and beans, which is absolute winner. Lancashire hot pot, fruit and dumpling custard. So I used to always love, I know some people hated it, I always loved the pate, or as we like to say, pate, because it's a bit working class. Some people used to think it tastes like cat food, but I absolutely loved it. So when we were down at the PB in the FOB, And we used to get our, if we went on to single man rations, that you would see grown men like fight over, I mean, this won't be news to you doing this, but grown men fight over like menu F to menu E and things
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. All the nostalgia of it.
I mean, I heard one of the favourites is the Yorkie bar.
Yeah, not for girls.
Yeah.
Pricks. Can you
Well,
believe that?
not for civvies and
How
that.
fucking dare they?
Go on to that, Jan.
Or French onion. They used to think that we might be a bit refined. I think that was for the officers, wasn't it? French onion soup.
Where is it? There you go.
Not for civvies. She's got a fucking skirt on. Can we all just acknowledge that it may say not for civvies, but I can see a skirt there. I mean, although, like, you know, boys can wear skirts as well. Particularly you guys can wear skirts, so.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
Hello everyone, just a quick one here, halfway through the video. If you're enjoying the content, please give us a like and a comment. It would greatly appreciate it. It'd help us a lot with our project. How about you also share it with a friend or anyone that may be interested. If you know anybody who may be interested in helping us achieve our goal, any veterans that want to talk to us, please get in contact with us via our socials. Thanks guys. So in Afghanistan, what would you say was probably the highlight of your tour?
Oh, I think that's really difficult. So, like, it's arduous, you know, and you have days like thinking, fucking hell, this is hard work. And you get through it, and I think that does something to you as a person, and the resilience that you get from that, for you know, that you'll take through life is massive. I loved my job. I felt really proud of what I did, like particularly when I was on MERT. It was a really hard job. You had to work really hard to get there. You had to go to university and become a paramedic. And then the selection to get onto the MERT team was like, as you can imagine, really difficult, really robust. You used to get absolutely grilled and thrashed. And it was an amazing team to be part of. The medics, the nurses and the doctors on it were world class. And it felt so purposeful. You know, you felt like you were making a difference in the world by looking after these soldiers that were injured. It was amazing.
Now, I understand if you don't want to answer this, but I'm going to follow that up with what would you say was the worst time?
I mean, I always, whenever I talk to people that I was away with and on ops with, I will always say it was the best of times and the worst of times, because being in those environments where it's arduous, it's quite dangerous, but it bonds people together so much, and it creates you know, I'll say like a brotherhood between people that is unlike anything else that you've ever done. It was always really hard when we lost soldiers. You had to disconnect from what was in front of you, and it sounds such an awful thing to say, but essentially it's when the stretcher goes down on the floor of the chinny, it's a piece of meat that you've got to work on. You have to take away that that's a person, that's a son, that's a brother, that's a father, and you just have to work on that piece of meat in front of you, and then get rid of them. Because as soon as you attach to that a personality, you know, oh, this guy was a massive Leeds United supporter or whatever it was, the weight of that will become really heavy, and the accumulation of how many of these people that you've seen are having life-changing injuries or dying from them becomes massive. So I just used to treat it like a piece of meat and get them down. Every now and again you'd have something that would kind of like jerk you back into seeing them as a person, and that was always really difficult. And I personally didn't like attending the vigils for soldiers that had died, because it brought that in, and it wasn't out of that you didn't have any respect for them and didn't want to pay your respect. It was just that at that time, and of having been so close to it, I didn't really want to be around it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So at the start of this year, I'll share with you an experience with me. Now, I wasn't in the military, But at the start of this year, a very, very close colleague of mine died on my site. He came to work. I'm not going to name his name for the sake of the family or anything. Came to his work, sat down, got his cup of tea out, opened up his penguin biscuit, and he died on the spot. Went to cardiac arrest. Me and another guy got him into the recovery position, tried to help him out as much as we could. There was an army medic on site. We were working on an MLD site when we were there. He's came along, tried to help us. I was in charge of getting in communications with the ambulance crews and whatnot. Unfortunately, he didn't make it, but because I knew him so well, it really did affect me for a while, and I was invited to his funeral. I did go, but there was a part of me that really didn't want to go because of how much I knew him, and I didn't know if I would be able to go through it because I was there through the end of it. But I went to it, and I'm glad that I did go to it, but I will admit it did weigh heavy on me for a few weeks. But I totally understand what you mean by that.
Yeah.
Moving on for that, what was the process for whenever there's a casualty? Can you tell me step by step?
Yeah, so from like a MERT point of view, so the incident would happen on the ground, and you would have to, whoever was on the radio would drop a 9-liner. If I had the 9-liner in front of me now, I would remember. I'm pretty sure we needed 3 or 4 of those lines. So each line, so line 1 would be like grid, your call sign, amount of casualties, type of injuries, and then an at-missed report and how the HLS was going to be marked. I mean, someone on here will absolutely roast me for getting that 9-liner wrong. I can't remember. It's over 10 years ago, and it weren't my job. But we would only need something like line 1, 3, and 7 to activate, okay? And then they could then fill the rest of it in whilst we were in flight. We just needed to know where we were going, how the HLS is going to be marked out, and maybe like how many casualties were coming. MERT was reserved for the most unwell people. So you could send Dusthoff or Pedro to the more gunshot wound legs and bits and pieces like that. But generally, MERT was reserved for the most unwell casualties. So they would drop that 9-liner, and we would then be activated. And that would happen. We'd be in a shack near the flight line, and the fire alarm would go off. So it would kind of go and it would be on a 2-tone. And then just where the armourers were as well was a big old school brass bell, which I'm sure everyone's seen a film of, like World War II, when they used to ring the bell and run like hell. So someone used to shake the bell, and everybody used to run towards the aircraft. And we would get that aircraft up in minutes. You know, all the pilot doing the pre-flight checks and stuff like that would be just going through them at a rapid rate of fire to get up and get out to our guys or girls who were injured. And then in flight, the ground sign could then kind of update us about what was happening. But for that to be successful, people often concentrate on or look towards the medical staff on the back or the aircrew on the helicopter. But what gets missed is the armourers prepped that. The technicians had to come out and make sure that you have to have somebody like on a giant fire extinguisher in case it bursts into flames. The air traffic control were clearing all airspace, and Bastion was so busy as an airspace. So the effort, you know, from everybody, from the signallers receiving the message, like back in JTAC and things like that, it's huge. And it wasn't just 12 people on the back of an aircraft. The mission to go and get these guys out of the shit would have had 100 people involved in it, working their asses off to get them.
See, when you're not attending a situation, what was everyday life like in Bastion on camp?
Hot. So we did 24 hours on, 24 hours off as MERT. So you do 24 hours on the flight line where you stay in a little shack, which is like kind of like a little caravan, you know, that you'd get like if you're on a building site or something like that. It was just like that. 2 sets of bunk beds in because you're staying there overnight. The shack next to us was the air crew. They were doing exactly the same as us. And to the other side was the RAF regiment who provided our force protection. We had some benches out the front and some scrim net so we could just smoke, lift weights, just have cups of teas. So we'd be down there kind of chilling, looking after the kit, 'cause if you imagine you're intubating people on the back of a helicopter, the amount of medical kit that you have to have is massive. And we'd sometimes like pop over to dust off and have a kind of chat with our American colleagues over there, watch loads of films, smoke loads of cigarettes, just that kind of stuff really.
What was the go-to brand of cigarettes?
So you could have these ones called L&M, which were really cheap. Taste like shit. You could have blues or reds. Your throat would be absolutely ripped to pieces. So I just stuck with Lambert and Butler menthol, which was £20 at the NAFI for 200 cigarettes. So they were cheaper than buying a packet of Haribo.
No getting any cigars or anything like that off the Yanks?
There was cigar clubs. Some people had cigar clubs where they used to get together and sit and have cigars. And we used to go for poker nights with the dust off team as well. But a lot of the time we were busy. You know, at the same time, if you did a fly and you do a job, you've got to turn that helicopter round to be ready again, because all patrols might be minimised whilst your asset is picking up somebody who is unwell. So everyone needs to go to ground, stay safe, because the asset's out, come back in, rejig it all, re-prep it all. And then there's a lot of debriefing as well that goes in, because it's, you're talking about like how people marked out a HLS or what went well, what went unwell. And also debriefing, because these type of jobs had a significant impact on people's mental health. So the longer the operation went on for, the more that we began to realise that, and realise how we had to spend quite a lot of our time just talking about what had happened in the incident at hand.
See how earlier that I mentioned that just doing those small, well, you mentioned it also, but doing the small things that could create such a boost for morale. What other things did you guys typically do to just keep everything hunky-dory, to keep smiles going?
So, like, one of the things about the military, and during my time in the military, it's probably changed quite a bit now, but it's kind of like Never Never Land. You know, you're all the lost boys and you don't actually ever really have to grow up. So we just played a lot. Like, we played a lot of tricks on each other. We used to watch loads of films, and particularly like when I was on MERT, we would actually watch stuff like Frozen or Pitch Perfect. And I think it was guys and girls, by the way, not just the girls. I think it was the light-heartedness of it. It's so non-serious. It's just really fun. And then we used to get one of the pilots, his wife used to send us out the Great British Bake Off every week. And we used to all pile in, to get, I don't even like the British Bake Off, but it was just something to like really look forward to every week. And then also once a week on MERT, we used to do a tea and cake afternoon. Because obviously there was a lot of officers, you know what I mean? So do a tea and cake afternoon. So we used to get our family to just send us like some cake and things like that. And we'd all look forward to doing that on a Wednesday or whatever it is. We'd do little music quizzes or just banter about, really. Just be stupid.
Can you remember any of the pranks or anything?
So one of our, there was a colonel who was, I believe he was an anaesthetist, and he was double badged as well. So he had done his all arms course, and he'd done P Company. So he was a bit of a cool bastard. And he used to love screaming at people out the car window, but he would say, watch this. Put your fucking hat on, out the window. And then obviously someone shit themselves, and then he'd sort of drive off giggling a little bit. So he had like a real military presence about him. And when he was leaving he'd finished his tour, we decided to like play some tricks on him. So we filled his bag with we put like loads of salt sachets in it, and vinegar, loads of salt and vinegar in his bag. And then put a little note on saying like, for the chip on your shoulder. And then we managed to find like loads of knives out the mess, like proper knives out the mess. And we hid them all through his kit. So we were hoping that like he would get stopped to have like all the knives on him as he went through like airport security and things like that. Which he actually didn't get stopped going through airport security. And he sent us an email when he landed and said that in his pockets, in his kit, he just like suddenly found all these little like cutlery knives and stuff, and then said that he'd gone up the aircraft to the RAF air steward, like wielding all these knives around, saying like, excuse me, I found all these knives. We said we'd embarrassed him highly, but he took it all in good faith.
So, what was the reason for you to say, right, enough's enough, it's time for me to leave?
So I did just over 12 years because I joined up at 17. So when I was in, all the time served before you were 18 was time for the Queen. So I got to the 12-year point, which put me at 30 years old. And I'd lived this really fun, really nomadic military lifestyle for the past 12 years. I'd gone on I'd done my paramedic course, and that was everything that I'd set out to do. And I just kind of suddenly had this real desire to feel more grounded, to have a home, to have some stability in my life. Afghan had shut down, and for the first time ever, I didn't really want to deploy anymore. And I'd always been someone who'd come back and said, I want to go straight back out, and I just didn't want to go. And I decided that was kind of my time to move on and do something different and have some more stability.
See, was it 2021 when we were pulling out of Kabul? What was your reaction to that?
I just thought it was so sad, because I think for all of us that were in Afghanistan, for all of the sacrifices that were made, not just people who had physical injuries, but the mental load and the load on our families as well. You know, when you deploy, you put your family through an awful lot, and we all thought it was for something good. And I think that we were all out there for each other, but ultimately we thought that we were probably making a good difference in the world. And, you know, people can agree or disagree with that, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, and that's why you can disagree and pick that kind of mindset apart. But to see it fall like it did was just so sad. And I know that a lot of people that I served with, like, their hearts were really with the Afghan people, and really felt for them, really wished things was different. I think it's really sad.
I mean, everyone that I've spoken to that's been in the forces, like when we were speaking to Liz McConaughey and Steve Brown, they've said the exact same thing. And I think Liz kind of summed up best. She says at the time that the British forces and the other members of NATO were there, they kind of brought a somewhat stability in some regions of Afghanistan, and they kind of made life a bit more possible for the population. Children could go to school, girls could go to school, women could get jobs, teaching. But as soon as the forces pulled out, they've just went totally back. Now girls can't go to school, women can't go anywhere without a man with them. They're poorly treated. It's just went backwards.
Yeah, it did. And, you know, I'm not a subject matter expert in geopolitics of Afghanistan and things like that, but obviously you read, don't you, and you look at things. And in the 70s, Kabul city was it was a metropolitan, cosmopolitan city. Women wore trousers, they went to university, they were lecturers. Life was very different to what it is now. So it's not, I don't believe it's not that we went in and expected Afghanistan to suddenly become a westernized country. We never did, and that country should have its own values and its own cultures and everything else. But what some of what we were trying to achieve wasn't actually new to Afghanistan, that they had been there at some point in the past.
See, when you left, did you receive any assistance for the military, the MOD or anything like that, like to help get you on your feet?
So when I left, I did the standard resettlement package. The career advice I felt was poor. We did a really good CV workshop and things like that, but the career advice wasn't great. I was in such a fortunate position that during my time in the military, they'd sent me to university, to Coventry University, to do my paramedic degree. So I had a qualification that transitioned over, but I didn't think it was very good. And what they never prepared you for was the psychological impact of leaving the military. The practical stuff they tried to set you up for, but how it would feel, nobody told you about that.
Because you've went from this position where you feel like you've had this purpose, this role is vital, and all of a sudden that identity is being taken off you, and now it's like you don't know what to do with yourself, no way.
Yeah, it's such a shift. And like you said, it's identity. I think I never realised how much of my identity was in the RAF. You know, whenever I met new people, like, hi, I'm Jenna, what do you do for a living? I'm in the RAF, and the conversation flows. And people will be like, wow, that's so interesting. Tell me about that. You know, so where have you been and what have you done? And you had this huge part of who you were and your core values and core beliefs. But, you know, you've been doing it since you were really young. And then all of a sudden you leave and you're not that person anymore. You're just Jenna. And that shift I found really, really difficult and hadn't expected it at all, because you come into the end of your military career and you're like, yeah, fuck you, I'm done with this shit. Like, I'm going to put my hands in my pockets, and why the fuck do I have to wear a hat outside anyway? You know, and you're so done with it. And then you're out and you have to grieve this lifestyle that you've had. You've basically been a part of a cult for the past 12 years, you know, and it's so hard. And you have to kind of learn who you are without the military.
I mean, the whole part about the mental health with the military, it is a growing issue at the moment. I mean, quite recently on the 4th of June, Lance Corporal James Jimmy Johnson committed suicide. What would you say the MOD could be doing better to help, assist to prevent this?
So at the minute, there's lots of charities out there, but there's not enough, and there's not enough people coming forward. I feel like the government could do more. They should look for these people more and make it much more accessible. One of the problems that you have with people that are committing suicide and veterans is that some of them unfortunately develop substance abuse problems when they leave, as a way of coping, as a way of self-medicating. And that can be really shameful, but it's not something to be ashamed of. If you're not accessing the help, that is what will happen. Someone will turn to alcohol, drugs, or gambling. And then that's going to add an additional layer onto what they're already struggling with. And a lot of the services cannot or will not accept people that are in substance abuse. They need to be clean to then access the mental health support. And we really need something that addresses both at the same time, because they're connected and they come hand in hand. And I think that more government-led programs with that would be really helpful, and housing and just that general job support as well. We should be catching these people as they fall. And a lot of people that join the military are similar to myself, come from working class backgrounds. You know, some people have had really difficult childhoods, and that then they have a higher increase of PTSD and things like that if you come from that sort of background. And we should be helping these people out. We should be taking care of them. I can't believe that there are veterans on the streets. It just should never be happening.
No, 100%. I mean, there used to be a guy that sat on top of Waverley Steps in Edinburgh called Darren Green. Darren Greenhill Field. Ex-tank regiment, served multiple years, done multiple deployments as well. Homeless, sat there for, let's say, about maybe 2-3 years. Spoke to him a few times, one of the nicest people you'd ever meet. It came out that his sister tried to get in contact with him, but he didn't want to be a burden. Unfortunately, one year towards Christmas, I can't remember what year it was, but it was I want to say it was in the last decade, he was found dead in the street. He had died hypothermia, I believe. And it's stuff like that just shouldn't be happening. When folk are struggling after leaving the military, there needs to be a lot more done. I mean, like we were saying, the military is your life. It's all you really know. To come out, to have to get a job, you're in a totally different environment. You're now having to adapt to this new environment, and that's totally alienated to you. You're now having to try and find your own home and everything, whatnot. It can be a real struggle to have all these things piled on top of you. I mean, the folk that are being homeless should be getting more help. And I think at the moment, well, it's not right now, the priority with home and accommodation is totally wrong.
Yeah, and when you talk about homeless veterans and veterans that are struggling, you're not talking about hundreds of thousands of people. Like we're talking about thousands, and it's thousands too many. But it doesn't need in my opinion, an enormous cash injection to help these people out. You know, and like I said before, that people are going to have problems that come alongside PTSD. They are going to have substance problems or gambling problems or other things, and they need to be addressed. And there should be programs and there should be help for these people, and they shouldn't feel any shame in coming forward. The NHS does have something called Op Courage at the minute, which is something that they can access for veterans, and there is a veteran status with the NHS. Which can fast track you into certain treatment programs and things like that. And that can be really helpful. On the other side of it as well, something that I'm aware of is that within the armed forces community and the veterans community is a high percentage of undiagnosed ADHD. So, which ADHD will make you an exceptional soldier, airwoman, or sailor, as long as the military don't know about it before you get in, because it's a slight bar to entry. But I can say from my experience, there's lots of people that serve that have got ADHD and they're exceptional. But when they come out, they will be potentially financially unreliable. Again, we go back to like addiction, struggle with relationships, struggle to hold down employment because the boundaries within civilian employment aren't as the punishment isn't as severe, you know, if you balls it up basically. And it's multifactorial, it's multi-layered as to why these veterans have ended up homeless, and each thing needs addressing without that sort of shame and stigma that usually comes with it.
See how you were mentioning there about the not being spotted having ADHD when you're joining the military. Would you say the military is very strict when it comes to joining up, you know, like its standards, like medical standards and whatnot?
Yeah, so I actually used to work when I first left the military for Capita, and I worked for the section of Capita that deal with British Army recruitment in the medical department. So for the British Army, your entire medical record is now scrutinised. So it's printed off, it's sent off to Capita, and it's scrutinised by a team. And they are bound by a publication called JSP 950 pre-entry standards. They can't go around that. So it's not their fault. That's what the MOD have said. You must stick to these. And ADHD, I would have to, again, my information might be slightly out of date. Initially was a bar to entry if you had ADHD. It was later only a bar to entry if you had ADHD and had violent tendencies in the past. But that might be your mum taking you to the doctors at 7 years old and saying he's just thrown a chair around the classroom. It could just be that one incident, but that one incident will bar you then from the military. And then later, ADHD wasn't a bar, but you couldn't be on medication, and you had to have 5 statements that were from pillars of the community to say that you had a good character. So that might be a scout leader, a teacher, an employer. But you ask someone with ADHD to find the time to go around to 5 different people, collect that information, put it together, and get their arse down to the post office and get it sent. It's almost an impossible task. And when you have people with ADHD, you want those people that they are risk takers. You know, that's why they make excellent soldiers, because you're going to say, listen, you might die, okay? And they'll be like, oh, that sounds great. Yeah, I'm in for it. And you're going to miss that whole population of your ADHDers out of the military, which I think is a real shame, because I think they provide so much.
So if you could call the shots, what would you change?
About the military?
Yeah.
About what in particular with ADHD?
ADHD, treatment of soldiers, in and out.
So I think that in the military, I think the treatment it's changed a lot. They seem to be not being able to recruit anymore, and they seem to be hemorrhaging more soldiers than they're getting in. And I think that really needs to be looked at. Like, why is that happening? The military shrunk in size massively over the past 20 years, and you sign up to the military, but it is a job, and you sacrifice. There's a huge amount of personal sacrifice, and everybody seems to say, but you know what you're getting into. But then who's going to do it? Who is going to do those jobs? If you just go around and say, you know what you were getting yourself into, nobody's going to do it, are they? So there should be some positives out of the military. The housing should be decent. The pay should be good. Even the lowest rank should be able to save money and get a house deposit together, or they should help them get a house deposit. And it should be fun. It should be a really, really fun job. It should be one of the best jobs in the world. They should be able to go on adventure training because you sacrifice so much that you should get something back for it. Outside of the military, I think that veterans should be taken care of better. I think that there should be more done about the mental health aspect of leaving the military. Not just the fact that you may have PTSD, because we're talking about the extremes, but just your average veteran. What are they going to go through? How are they going to manage in the workplace? Are they going to feel anxious? Are they going to get low moods? You don't have to be at the extreme scale of PTSD and suicidal to still need to access help and still need support when you leave. And I think that that's something that really needs to be looked at, both within ourselves and outside of us as well.
I fully agree with the whole having to help more with the mental health aspect of it, because earlier when we were speaking, I was telling you the story about a guy that I worked with called Jock. Career soldier, was in there for just shy of maybe, I want to say 20 years. He was in Iraq in 91, and his final tour was in Afghanistan just before, or maybe before or after the amalgamation of the Scottish regiments, because he was Royal Scots, I believe. Left, was in the trades, and his time in the army had seriously affected him. Any little bang, immediately into a firing position on the knee. In a shop one time, sees a crisp packet with a different brand of crisps. He was starting to get a wee bit concerned, thinking it might have been an ID. And I remember chatting away with him, and this is what kind of got me interested in speaking to ex-forces. I asked him, did you ever receive any kind of help with that? And he went, no. He says, as soon as I was finished, it was literally a shake, right, thanks, go. That was it. He says, never received any help whatsoever.
I think though, like, part of our problem, there's way more that the government could be doing, but I think we don't, as the current veterans, we're not engaging as well. We don't go to the British Legion and have a pint on a Sunday. We're not doing the cenotaph marches and letting people see us and be aware of us. We've all got our head down trying to hustle in our day-to-day lives, bring our kids up, pay the bills and things like that. And we're not engaging into the veteran community in a way that I think would get us seen more and become more visible. And I think sometimes it's because that feels like it belongs to a different generation of veterans. We've always looked at World War II veterans in those, and Falklands veterans and all that kind of stuff. But actually, it's now us that those places are going to look to. Like we are now the veterans that need to step into those shoes and get involved in our own veteran communities and see real change off the back of that. It's not going to change by us sitting at home and WhatsApping our mates and saying it's shit. We know it's shit, but we have to start to facilitate and show that we want these things to change.
I've got a couple more questions for you. I've just popped in my head there now. Bringing it back to the recruitment issue with the British forces at the moment, do you think the recent prosecutions of British troops may have an effect on that? People seeing this on the news, British troops being prosecuted for effectively doing their job at times. Do you think that could be what could cause people to be a bit hesitant to go on?
I think it could do. I think there's probably, like, as a nation, we don't have a unified sense of pride at the minute, do we? Within our countries, within the United Kingdom, and when everything is so refracted, and the left's are very left and the right's very right, and we all kind of live in this echo chamber where we hear our own beliefs brought back to us. You don't have this group that want to come together for one cause. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think particularly it's really difficult for me now, because unfortunately I'm 38, I can't believe it, but I can't put myself in the shoes of someone who's 16. I'm now way too far down the line to kind of understand what would motivate them to join the military. But I do think seeing people be convicted for offences, but also we're viewing operational tours with hindsight now, aren't we? We're looking back through a long lens. It feels quite far away, and we can really pull apart what everybody did. And there is definitely, it is justified to look at how we can improve things and to hold people accountable where crimes were committed. But we're doing that at such a long length that you forget that there's people behind that, there's soldiers behind that, there's families, that somebody may have just seen their friend blown to 1,000 pieces. And that to criminalise people or to say things like, oh, you know, you're all baby killers and stuff like that, you've completely lost sight that you're just a group of people that wanted to better yourselves as teenagers. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
Other question, you mentioned about being at the Cenotaph on Remembrance Sunday. We asked this question to everybody that we speak to. It's in regards to your awards. Some people, not that fussed about them, they're tucked away in a drawer, they never see the light of day. Other people make sure that they're always clean, polished, hanging on the living room wall or anything like that. How do you view your awards?
So when I left the military, I spent probably the first 4 or 5 years, I really closed the door on it and just kind of ignored it. And then I became a mother, and that was another different change in identity. But in recent years, it's something that I've connected back to because it really has a massive part of forming who I am. And it's a huge, it's not the book, but it's definitely a big part. It's a big chapter in my story. And so I actually got my medals out of the garage, which is where they sat. It's so bad, isn't it? And they are now in my living room on the shelf. They're framed. My leaving present from when I left was that they framed my medals for me and put my rank in, and it was such a lovely gesture. And they now sit in the living room because they should, as they should.
What advice would you give to those that are possibly thinking about a career in the forces?
I just think go for it. Like, just go. If you've got a sense of adventure, and it doesn't matter whether you like being told what to do or not, they'll get you to do what they want you to do. Just go for it. You will have the best time. And you don't have to think about things as 12 years or 22 years. Have 3 or 4 years in your mind, or whatever the minimum service is, and just go and enjoy yourself, because even if you only do 2 or 3 years, you will forever be a veteran. You are in the veterans community. It doesn't matter whether you did no operational tours or 20 operational tours, you are validated and in our community, and you will make friends and have experiences that will form who you are for life. And I think that that's amazing.
I've just remembered the question. So recently I've been seeing, so I'm a medal collector that's predominantly First World War medals. I try my best to get in contact with the relatives. If I can get in contact with them, I'll offer them the relatives' medals back. Because I think it's very important for them to stay with the family. Recently there seems to be a rise of people selling their medals for whatever reason and whatnot. That would you say it's more important to keep them, or would you sympathise with them that are having to sell their medals?
So I fully intend, when I retire and go into my retirement home, I will wear my medals on my dressing gown until the day that I die. That is my plan, and that is what I tell everybody. I cannot wait to be in that nursing home, and I'm going to strap those medals to that dressing gown. And those medals are my legacy. I don't have lots of money. I don't have jewellery. I don't have a vintage car. Those medals are one tangible thing that I have that I would love to see passed down through my family, for them to hold and to know that in a small way, I played a part in history, and that's something that I feel really proud of. I think if someone doesn't feel like that about their medals, that's their journey. And perhaps some people are quite angry due to some of the things that we've talked about, how they've been treated, and that is absolutely justified. But I would always say, just tuck them away in a drawer, give it 5 years, and maybe you'll feel different. Don't sell them, don't let them go, because you earned those medals. And whether you dislike the government, the organisation, afterwards, that those medals aren't about that. They're about you and your sacrifice and what you've done.
I mean, we had two very different answers from Liz and Stevie when we were talking about the topic of the medals. So Liz went and says that before, similar to you, she wasn't that fussed about it. But then it wasn't until a few years ago she got them out, got them court mounted, started polishing them, and has them on display. Whereas with Stevie, yeah, he's got them mounted and has them up in a frame, but he says he's not that fussed about them. In fact, he even went and says to us during an interview, do you have any idea what they'd maybe be worth? Straight away, I've said, do not sell them. Keep a hold of them, because you might not see the value in them. You might see them as the money value, but to your children, your grandchildren, or your great-great-grandchildren, doesn't matter how far it is, somebody down that line will see them and want to know who you are and want to learn about your story. That's one of the biggest things with me as well. The only set of medals I've got that actually is my family is my Uncle John. He was Royal Navy and he died at 19 years old for the Spanish flu after the war. He's only got a little war medal and victory medal. The medals that I wear to Remembrance Day is a replacement group honouring my great-great-grandfather, and he's my hero. He's the one that I look up to. I've got his photos and that, I've got his letters, got all his personal items like his trend chart, everything that's it for his medals. And just to have that and to have them on and to be able to say that I'm representing him, or next year I might be representing my uncle, it just brings a sense of pride knowing that my family, these people in my family have done that part. They were there. They helped change this part of history. And it's all about being proud of your legacy, the family legacy.
And it's your heritage. And I think that's really like what you just said then about how you feel about holding, your great uncles or your great grandfather's medals. Maybe if you're thinking about getting rid of yours and you're thinking about selling your medals, you hold them and think, how would I feel if I could hold my great granddad's medals right now? And like you said, it becomes beyond you. And because they've got your service number and rank, they're traceable, and the stories behind them are traceable, and they can come back alive, because in 100 years' time, everybody that we knew is probably going to be dead. But you're so lucky that you're in the military, and your family, although there's no one living that knows your story is recorded through military archive. And without those medals, that story is going to be difficult to find.
Very well put. Well, I think we'll wrap it there, Jenna. Well, thanks very much for joining us, and again, thank you very much for taking the time for speaking to us. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we close off?
No, just if anyone out there is struggling or having a hard time, there are so many people on the apps, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, that their inbox is open, they want to hear from you, and it doesn't matter how bad your struggle is, just reach out and speak to each other.
Actually, one other question. Now, this is a very important one. So, once the flag is totally covered in signatures, it's going to be getting auctioned off and the money will be going to a charity. None of us get to pick which charity it is. The people who we are speaking to will get to have a say who it is, and whichever charity's got the most votes will receive the funds. Is there any particular charity that you'd like to see the funds go to?
Yeah, definitely combat stress for me. Like definitely looking at that, like we've touched on so much throughout this, that mental health support for the veterans.
Right, well that's definitely noted then.
Awesome.
Well, again, Jenna, thanks very much for taking the time for speaking to us.
Thank you so much.